Okay, welcome. So today I wanted to offer some reflections about why many who go to boarding school in their later life end up with burnout, and why is it that they, when they're in companies, when they're in positions of leadership, they often micromanage. So, so I was talking with a friend a few weeks ago. I was at a festival and I bumped into him and we were talking about leadership. We were talking about one of the people he was working with who was struggling with burnout. And he was saying that this CEO was basically trying to micromanage everyone. And I said, he said he's South African. I said, did he go to boarding school? And he said, yeah, I think he did actually. And I'm kind of seeing that this is a very common trait for people who've been to boarding school, is this thing of one is burnout, but then the second aspect is the reason we burn out is because of we try to micromanage everything. So we might be at the top, but instead of trusting, becoming that emotionally intelligent leader and trusting that people, we give them the space, the training, the encouragement, they will do a good job, we try and control every single aspect. And, it's like that thing of not letting go. And it was making me reflect about, working with someone recently, and the biggest shift that they had was, again, boarding school educated, they learned to start letting go. And they stopped micromanaging, and what happened is the business just transformed. Suddenly deals started to come in, and it's like, wow, transformation can happen. So I'm just seeing this common trait that as leaders who've been to boarding school, what we will often do is we will try and control everything. Because why? And it's to do with, one is there was nothing else that we can control as children, so we learned to control ourselves. But when we go into a position of leadership, as Jung said, psychological rule says that when an inner situation is not made conscious, it happens outside as fate. So if we're trying to control everything inside ourselves, we're therefore going to control everything in our system. And I was talking at the screening in Yorkshire with a South African man, and he was just like, he hadn't realized that he had boarding school syndrome. But he says, I've got real hypervigilance. I hadn't realized it came from boarding school. And he said also that he tries to tie everything down. So, nothing moves. It's like control. And he's like, I hadn't realized that this stemmed from boarding school. So what's the solution? So as my client found is, one is you've got to do that inner work. You've got to practice, letting go. Best way of learning to let go is meditation. Practicing drawing your attention back over and over again in your meditation. Then in the day when you're like, oh, I need to control that, we just feel that within ourselves, but we don't react. We don't then, do the controlling. And then other ways is like, just throughout the day, just reflecting, how am I doing? What am I trying to control things? And one of my favorite sayings that I've picked up on over the last 20 years is, I let go of getting my own way. And that came up really from the monastery when I was having my breakdown. The shift was just let go. And when I yielded, it was like, I moved back into joy. I could let go of this, I've got to control everything. And, another aspect of where this comes from for the boarding school educated person is the timetabling. Our day is filled from 7 o'clock in the morning till 9 at night. And this was partly, done in boarding schools. The history book shows that there was a lot of problems in the 19th century, a lot of bullying. Kids had a lot of time on their hands, and it was just Lord of the Flies, more so than it has been the last 100 years. And so they found if they timetabled, throughout the day, the children didn't have the time to play up. So it's just keeping them busy. But what that means when we're in leadership, because we're used to just filling our times, it's very difficult for us to stop, relax, and let go. So yeah, just some reflections. It's like micromanaging. Just notice if you're in a position of leadership and you're micromanaging, take a breath. Like, this is maybe something that has come from schooling, and especially if you've gone to boarding school, it's like, and actually, as happened with my client, when he let go of that micromanaging, his business totally transformed. And it was like, wow, it's just amazing to see him transform and then his business transform. So just some reflection and ideas. And yeah, thank you. And got a fascinating podcast this Friday with psychiatrist Dr. Paul Miller, talking about complex PTSD, talking about the path of healing, and also talking about boarding schools. What's his feeling around that? So that's really, really fascinating conversation. So thank you, and wishing you all a wonderful week. Please, any comments, please leave them below.